here at Henrietta, Oklahoma. These are my two books. I've got My Life with the Hairy People and Respecting the Water. And I've got both of them. They were something I never thought I would do. I never thought I would write a book, and then I did. This is indigo. It's not going to be clear. I don't know if the projector and my laptop are not compatible or what. But anyway, indigo is right here. If you're in the Bigfoot world very much and you've heard anything about me, you've heard about indigo. He is now in his early 20s. We have interacted with each other since he was very small. He and my dog, at the time, Watto, who was a 130-pound bull mastiff, loved each other. Okay, this is me. I don't have any degree at all. I didn't finish high school. But what am I in the Bigfoot world? I can't tell you a lot of the history, chronologically, of what we know with some of the icons of the Bigfoot world. So what am I in the Bigfoot world? I'm just a woman who's known about the Bigfoot almost all my life. And I'm not talking about just things, footprints, glyphs, structure, other things. I'm talking about actual physical interaction. I'm not the only one who has seen these that I have seen and that I interact with. There's a lot of other people too. And actually in Flash of Beauty, Paranormal Bigfoot, there's an incident that happens to a man named Richard Taylor, and he was with me. I was as surprised as he was. People say all the time, can I come to your place and see Bigfoot? Well, I don't know. I mean, you can come to my place, maybe, but I can't guarantee you anything. That you're going to see anything, that's totally their choice to do that. And I would never ask them to do something either. It's totally their choice. This is my grandmother. This is who began to teach me about them at the age of 6. This photo I didn't see until after she went into the nursing home. And we were going through her stuff, and she pulled this photo out, and I was looking at it, and I said, well, Gran, I've never seen this photo. And I said, what are you doing? And she said, I'm doing the walk. This was early 50s. It could have been 50, could have been 51, 52. She wasn't for sure exactly when it was done. She's demonstrating the Bigfoot walk. And when it's clearer, you can see she's just grinning so big. And it was so her when I said, what are you doing? And she said, I'm doing the walk. And just grinned. So she knew about them. She had a life of knowing about them. She grew up in the Boston Mountains in Arkansas. She was either on her horse or walking out in the woods all the time. And I know that's where I get my running off to the woods from, because that's what she did, and that's what I did and I do. What happened with her at her place? I was 6 years old. I was there at her house. I was outside playing in the dirt. I was sitting down. I always picked up little sticks and flowers and all kinds of things, and I'd make little things in the dirt, and I'd draw in the dirt. And I was sitting there intent on what I was doing, and I heard someone walk out. Well, I thought it was my grandmother. But when I looked up, it wasn't my grandmother. It was a young juvenile male. He wasn't very far from me. We were standing, or I was sitting, he was standing. He was looking at me, and I was looking at him, and I'm like, thinking that's probably a really hairy kid right there. And so he turned around and walked off. I jumped up, I went in, I told my grandmother what I had seen. I said, "What was that, Granny?" And she said, "What do you think it was?" And she let me think about that for a while. And then she started to answer my questions and to teach me about them. One of the things she said to me is, there are neighbors, and we will treat them with respect as a neighbor. Sometimes you see your neighbors, and sometimes you don't see your neighbors. But you know that your neighbors are always there. She always told me to have respect. She said, if there's respect between us, there's not going to be any problem. But that's the way it should be with humans too. If we would have respect, then we wouldn't have any problem either. But a funny thing with that story, that is my first recollection of knowing for sure, this is what I'm looking at. My mom and I were talking just a few years ago, and she asked me, she said, do you remember when you were 3? And she went through the whole thing. Do you remember when you were 3? We lived on Elder Street. You were sitting on the bed. I was in the closet getting clothes for the next day. Your dad was taking a bath. And I come out of the closet, and you were talking to a dirty, hairy man that was looking in the window. And I said, oh yeah, Mom, I remember that. I mean, even at 3, my mom screaming when she walks out of the closet, my dad's name, and then she says, oh my God, Arla, she's talking to a dirty, hairy man that's looking through the window. She looked at me and she said, do you think that was a Bigfoot? And I said, well, Mom, what do you think? And she said, oh, I saw Bigfoot. And I said, yes, you did, Mom. I think you probably did. Now, I don't remember that as a Bigfoot because I talked to everything and everybody. But I'm just pretty sure that's what I was talking to, that was looking in the window. This gives you kind of a size comparison. People always say, well, gosh, what does it look like when you see one and they're so tall? This is Raven. He's in Expedition Bigfoot Museum in Cherry Log, Georgia. David and Melinda have the museum there. It's really awesome too. Raven is 9 foot. I'm 5'7". So this kind of gives you a rough look at how tall are they. They get taller than 9 foot. The tallest one I've seen is 14 feet. And a lot of people go, no, there's no way. You just think it was 14 feet. No. I wasn't the only one that saw it. There were other people who were there. I was here in the Kiamichi Mountains. We were at a cabin, and I had gone down to the meadow. I was gonna go down there and sing and drum, and I caught something out of the corner of my eye and heard something, and I looked over, and inside the tree line, this one was walking and paralleling me as I was walking. He walked through where there was a clearing in the trees, the canopy, and then there was one tree that had a huge limb, barely under that limb. So I'm like, that's really cool. You know, at that point I didn't know how tall he was. I knew he was tall. Well, one of the guys that was camping, here he comes running. You gotta come up here, Arla, you gotta come up here. You don't know what was paralleling you. And I said, yeah, I saw him. And he said, but you gotta come up here to the house. So I went up there. One of the guys was upstairs out on the little balcony. And where he saw him as he went through that clearing in the canopy and could get glimpses of him as he was walking along, as I was walking along. And he was like, there was a huge Bigfoot paralleling you. And I said, I know, I saw him. I know he went under a limb down here. And so we all took off down there and we measured that, and it was 14 foot. So that's big. That's pretty big. I hear reports of them being bigger, but you know, I can only say what someone says. I can't verify that. This that I saw, yeah, I know for certain how tall he was. I've seen many in my life because I've lived my life knowing about them. For almost 70 years, I've known for certain that they're here. I have no doubt. I remember very perfectly what he looked like. This audio is not working, I don't think. I'll see if it'll work here in just a second. This is an audio that I did, I think it was in 2011, actually. And I was in my tent in the woods, and I heard one coming up. There was one that was around that he would come through the woods like a bulldozer. There was no being quiet at all. And this particular night, I'm just laying there in my tent, and they do what sounds like a grunt. And for me, it's a greeting. They're letting me know that they're there. And so I'm laying there, and I hear this greeting grunt, and I just immediately say, hi, guys. And then he does this goofy howl that sounds like he's trying to say hello. Now, I had a spectrogram that was done on this. Actually, someone that did a lot of the BFRO spectrogram heard my audio and asked if he could do a spectrogram on it. Do y'all know what spectrograms are? They're actually kind of a voice analysis. What a spectrogram does, takes that sound and puts it on this chart kind of frequencies. Everything has a voice print of a frequency. And there is a frequency that the Bigfoot world has said is Bigfoot. I mean, all of them. The Ohio Howl, a lot of the other samurai chatter, different things fall in this frequency. And there's also that voice print too. There's some anomalies in there that I'm told that if you listen to that particular Bigfoot, again, you will know that that's who you're listening to. Now, I don't know that for certain because I really don't know that much about what to look for, but that's what I've been told by people who do those. So I'm hoping this will play, and I'm hoping it'll be loud enough. Here we go. You heard that? laughed at him, because it sounded so funny. There's no lapse of time in between when I said, "Hi guys," and he answered me. And this fell within that frequency of what they have said is the Bigfoot. This next audio, I called a party. Well, it's going to play, so we'll talk about it afterwards. And now the coyotes are getting in on it. That's why I call it the party. It sounds like somebody out there is having a party. Now, the spectrogram was done on that too. And where they were howling and carrying on the Bigfoot, it showed it in spots. Because it wasn't, the whole thing wasn't them. There were just spots in that where they were. The others came up in the range that's assigned to coyote, whatever that is. And then the interesting ending to it, like they were being silenced. So that, I'm in my tent and I hear this. So it's interesting because they were just running and hollering and basically enjoying themselves. This, I don't think you're going to be able to see it all, but there's this paranormal aspect to the Bigfoot. And when more and more people come and say they've witnessed it, you have to at least look at it. One thing I always do when I speak is I'm not trying to prove anything to anybody. And you do not have to believe me at all. But one thing I would ask of you is that you take it and file it away. Maybe at some point you have some kind of experience like it, or maybe somebody you trust and know has an experience. Then you've got a reference. Wait a minute, I heard Arla talk about this, or whomever you hear talk about this paranormal aspect. Don't pitch it out. If you're truly scientific, you're going to look at every aspect of what's being brought. And I'm sure you can't see him. He's right here. It's kind of blurry on that. I called him the old white one. He's not there now, but I've seen him and his mate. And the interesting thing is he had a distinct look about him. And I have a good friend, Pete Buffalohead, who is Ponca, Kiowa. And we were talking about him one day, and he said, describe him to me. And so I described it to Pete. He said, that's exactly what they're seeing down around Kiowa, Oklahoma, all the way down to the Wichita Mountain. That this one had been seen and reports of exactly what you told me he looked like. So it wasn't just my seeing him, other people had seen him too. He's been seen in Oklahoma too. I have not seen him in several years. This particular day I was out taking photos. I take photos of everything. Lizards, leaves, trees, the sky. When I go out, if I'm going to be taking a lot of pictures, I always tell them, hey guys, I'm going to be taking photos today. Now they know what I'm doing. I mean, I can hide a trail cam. They know if I did that, I'm not going to do it. But it's not so much about them, it's about me and my respect for them. I'm being respectful of them. If I'm going to take a picture and you're right here in it, and I'm going to put it somewhere, I'm going to ask you, you know, kid, is it okay that you're in this picture? Hopefully you won't be blurry if you say yes, but you never know. So that's what I do. I want to be respectful. When I am respectful to them or to anybody, I'm respecting myself. I don't have to respect someone, but I am sure I've got to speak respectfully to them or treat them respectfully. My grandmother would not be very happy with me if I didn't. Okay, there he is. You probably can't see that any better, his mark. But it's on my laptop, and you can see it here if you want to look at it. This is what I was talking about. If there's respect between us, there's not going to be any problem. And that's something this whole world needs to learn, is to be respectful. And you don't got to believe anything the other person. You don't have to believe like them, but at least be respectful and allow them to have their own belief. And don't tell them you're crazy or you can't think like that. That's not right. There's no way in the world I would ever tell any of you that you can't believe what you believe. That's my email, contact. I've got something I hope it'll play. I'm going to share. I've never shared this publicly. A few people have listened to it. And there was a spectrogram done on it as well. But the one audio that I had that did play, the Hi Guys, his name is Rujusna. Now I'm going to nudge you a little bit here. How do I know his name is Rujusna? Because he told me. He didn't speak it out loud. This was in July. I had gone to the woods. I was just sitting out there enjoying the woods and the weather, and I heard him coming up through the woods. And I thought, I'm going to ask him who he is. And so I did. You know, who are you? You know, and he said, in my mind, he said, Rujusna. And I said, in fact, Rujusna. And he said again, Rujusna. So I didn't have audio out or anything, and it wouldn't make any difference anyway. But I did put that on my phone. He said his name is Rujusna. Now I've got photos of a trackway of his. I've got other things of him, and that was Rujusna in that audio, in the high dive audio. Now this audio that I'm going to play is them speaking English. The morning I listened to this audio, it was done in October of the same year that he told me his name. I come in from the woods, I got my coffee, I got in my recliner, kicked back, and I'm listening to audio. I don't know how many of you do that, but I have a lot of people say after I bring my audio in, I listen to it. So I flipped it on. About 8 minutes into the audio, I hear Rujusna. And I come up out of the chair and I went, oh my gosh, I know that name. And then I listened to the rest of the audio. It's not very long. A friend of mine took the audio and made a video out of it, and in that she put, when one is speaking, she put above that who was saying what. And Al Collett was there, and he was the one speaking to Rujusna. Now, if you've seen Paranormal, Flash Beauty, Paranormal Bigfoot, you heard part of the story of Richard Taylor, who had an experience. And Al Collett was the one that stepped out and did an owl call. Now, we saw this. He also saw the family, which there's not been anyone else who has seen the whole family together. That family consists of Arla Collett. Now, these are my names. This is what I call them. But you have Arla Collett, who is the dad. You have Mama, who is the mom. And the reason I call her Mama is because when she would sing to the babies at night, she would say, Mama, Mama. And that's why I call her Mama. Then there is Meridia, who is the oldest of the kids. Just under her is Indigo, the one that I had the picture of that I talked about as being a part of my life, a very personal part of my life. Then there's Blue, and who is a brother. And the reason I call him Blue is because he is so black that when the sun hits him, there's like this blue kind of look to him. And then there's the baby girl. And so that is the family that Richard actually saw. That's never happened before. I didn't have anything to do with causing that. I was asked to do something, and I did it. Now, if you have a problem with them speaking English, then I don't know how many of you have heard of many accounts of them speaking the native language of the area. And other times people have heard them speak. There was a guy that was Cuban. He knew an old Cuban dialect. Well, he was audioing, and he was saying things, talking to them. And he asked a question, and one answered it in that Cuban dialect. Most people wouldn't have known that that's what that was, but he did. So, now, there's another one of those paranormal things. Everybody calls it cloaking. I see a dark figure, and people say, oh my gosh, it's a dark figure. Well, yes, it might be if I hadn't been in that car right there, driving by, and that would be Indigo. He's quite buff now. He wasn't years ago as I've watched him grow, but he has now. Okay, let's see if it'll play. There we go.
In 2011, a different Sasquatch had come to my woods. He was like a bulldozer coming through the woods. In July, I was sitting out in the woods, just enjoying the area. I heard him coming and asked him who he was. He mind spoke to me through Justna. In October of the same year, I had recorded overnight. When I got up the next morning, I was reviewing the audio. This is what I heard.
That's his footprint, alcohol. Move back. Back out. Did you hear that? You hear the traditional things, knock, click, and different things in this way. Approach it slowly. We've had this slowed down where we can pick up on what he was saying. How many of you get these odd tones and sounds and stuff on your audio sometimes when you're around? That's from Justna's, one of his track waves. All right, that's him answering alcohol. All right, approach slowly. All right. That's indigo. That's artist drawing indigo. That's not coming out. We're going. I mean, any of you are welcome to listen to this again with, if you've got headphones or something, you want to listen to it. But they're speaking English. Now, why would they do that? Why would they speak English? And why would Al Caller say to Rujusna? He had already said Rujusna, and he said it in a way that he was going to get attention. If my mom said Arla, I knew I was being talked to. And why would he tell Rujusna to approach slowly? Now, what did I tell you about Rujusna? He never went anywhere quietly. It was like a bulldozer. He moved fast. So why did they do that? Why did they do that? This is what I think. I've had this for many years. Like I said, I've shared it with a few people. I've never put it out in a public forum. Why now? And I think people are ready to hear this, to entertain. We're dealing with something that's more than a flesh and blood ape in the woods. This is a sentient being, and it's more than sentient. Anybody have any questions?
Do they have a name for you?
Do they have a name for me? Kashima, my teacher calls me Aucha. And I've never asked him what that meant. I just accepted as that's what he called me. And you know, names are important, but they're not as important as we think they are. There's that feeling, you know, that you know somebody by their feeling. How does that person feel to me when I'm around them? I know what their presence feels like. The one thing I will say, if they give you their name, remember it. It is important in those instances. Anybody else?
First, thank you for sharing and these awesome audios. I was wondering if at some point when you get your spectrograph, is that gonna be cleaned up and you're gonna make it available for us to hear it cleaned up at some point?
You know, I don't know yet what I'll do with this or where it's gonna end up. At this point, I never thought that, I would hear the audio of Richard Taylor's. When we were together, I told him, no pictures, you're not gonna take pictures, but they don't seem to mind for me to audio. Now, I will tell you that they can drain the batteries
Oh, I know.
in the things that you use. They can stop and restart your recorder. They can do just about what they want to do. When Richard was there and he had his flare, and I was like, and he said, well, it quit working just now. So they can do that as well. But there comes a time when we're being pushed, humanity is being pushed to look at this, to know more. And so there are more and more photos coming out. I've seen some photos that are crystal clear. Now, AI might give us a little problem, but I mean, people have been able to use other things too to make fake photos and stuff. So, you know, my thing is know who's putting this stuff out. And you know, you can't know everything about them, but at least try to find out who they are. Now, if you search me on YouTube, you're gonna see just about anything, or even on the internet. It's interesting to search yourself and see what all's there. But you know, I don't know where it'll end up or where else, you know, I will share it. I had intended to share it here. And then when I started putting my presentation together, it was like, yeah, okay, let's do it. There'll be some that will understand, there'll be some that'll start questioning, and there'll be some that'll say, that's fake. It's not fake.
I just find the speech of them, having heard it myself in the woods, I find it particularly fascinating, and so I just thought if we could hear it better, more clear, I would love to hear it that way.
Yeah.
That's all.
The one thing I'm
Put it out
not
there, I'd like to know.
is a tech person. So, you know, if you're not doing good quality recording, then you're going to get a not so good quality audio. I wasn't intending to share anything I recorded, and I didn't for a while, because I got chewed up and spit out when I came into this many years ago. I didn't even realize there was such a thing as a Bigfoot research world. I thought they were teasing me. But I found out they weren't. And I don't have a problem with that at all. You know, so what I audioed on, and I've really never had anybody, I heard the audio while ago, knowing somebody who can really clean something up. Not everybody wants to touch your audio. So that's basically where that's going. Let's see, how much time do I have? Oop, I'm getting close, I think. Any other questions?
Why do you call Kashima your teacher?
When I was a young girl, my grandmother told me about Sasquatch, who would come and work individually with people. Now, I never thought I would ever have one come to me. I mean, I spent my whole life just about not talking about them in public. And then in 2009, that changed. And so a teacher, you'll know if there is one that stands out, that keeps presenting themselves to you in some way. It can be an audio, it can be in a footprint, something that you're seeing over and over and over again. But I tell people, open your mind, open your heart, and shift your paradigm, and get ready for something awesome to happen. If you're happy in your research where you're at, then that's okay too. But if you want more, one thing I've said from day one is you think you're going to learn about them when you get into this, and you do. But what you really learn is if you open your heart, shift your paradigm, you're going to learn more about who you are and how you live in this world. Thank you.